Murungi do a lot of consultancy work after he mentored me, and he would always tell me we should always remember to divide by 2. Many people don't know to divide by 2. You do consultancy work. I remember you opened even an account together, but any of us could design that account. So we would go do some work with him, and the people might be the ones we worked with. I would go and let's say get money for them, tell them come to this bank, take your money, or Murungi goes and give them the money. So they would ask, what is this kind of trust that you don't fear that the other one can take you? He was such a trusted person. No wonder my late mother and the mothers at home had the very high regard of him. And those values he carried until his death. He was somebody who would take his word. The way people say, Kafia is here, would say you can take it to the bank. Murungi's word would take it to the bank. That is the kind of person we are talking about. Now, Murungi cared about his siblings, the children's siblings, and the people from where he came from. Many can attest here today that they have passed through Murungi's hands and their home. Many of the people I can see here, Kina Flo, Kina Esther, and others, Kina Mutegi, Nairobi School, all of us, we are passed through Murungi's hands. That is a kind of a person we are talking about. A person who cared about everyone else, a person who shared whatever he had, and that is something we need to emulate from Mr. Murungi, because he left that to us, and we knew he did that to also help us learn, and that he cared about other people. Murungi was such an exceptionally intelligent person. I tell you, he would bring whatever topic. Let's say in a medical area, in whichever area, and Murungi, you would discuss that topic in depth. In fact, let me not say, I have not come, only know one person of the likes of Murungi. He was such an intelligent person. And in fact, there are many times during our discussions, you would always ask me, what can we do to our people of Igochi to uplift their lives? He was such a caring person. He went beyond his family. He went beyond his relatives. And he cared for even the people, for the people where he came from. And as we were saying the other day, this is one of people who would have actually, if the government were able to get some of his thoughts, they would have changed this country. Not even Meru, not Igoji, but the whole of this country. He was that kind of a person. That is the kind of a person we are talking about. Murungi, I remember him, he was really passionate about what I've said. And many times, even when he's sick, I've listened to him talking to his doctors when he's sick. And he would discuss about his sickness at the par with the doctors. And actually, they had very respect and regard for him. He was that kind of a person. He knew what needed to be done for his body. He would discuss with them, and they agree. Like the day he left the hospital, he told me, I've actually managed to convince them. And they have agreed with me, this is what needs to be done, and that is what I should do when I leave here. I don't want to talk more, but let me say that Mr. Murungi was passionate about, the welfare of everyone around him. I know even the neighbors and so forth. Murungi, I would say, let me end up by saying Murungi prepared his house in heaven. Murungi was an ambassador for the heavenly kingdom through his many godly deeds, and he shall be missed and remembered by his family, Karen, Mukami, and Susi, friends and close associates. Let me say that may Murungi's soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Okay, let's appreciate Daktari. I'd like to call another friend of Dad, and you will see him quite a number of times here because they were this tight. May I ask Jim Kamunde to come? Let's welcome him. One of the things King Julian used to do is to adopt people and to give. He educated his own. Then he married the family of Kellen and educated them. Then went to Nairobi school and educated them and sought scholarships for them. And one day Susie was saying, my dad sacrificed us. And I was just telling her, look at who is talking, because that's the same thing she does. Such a giver. Karibu sana.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. God is good. And all the time, God is good. Yes, as you have been told, my name is James Muteki Kamunde, or Jim Kamunde. And I was asked to come and speak and give a word. I am one of those you've heard repeatedly. There are so many people who passed through Mr. Murungi's hands, and I am one of them. And I want to give, a tribute to him, so I do not speak here on my behalf. I speak on behalf of very many who passed through his hands. And the only way I can give you an idea of how we benefited from him is by giving my own tribute. Now, I don't know if any of you ever got to see when the funeral service of the late Honorable Njenga Karume. If you did, then you saw there was this group which were calling themselves the orphans of Karume. It was not made very clear in what context they were orphans, because some of them, they came from, I know them personally, they have come from a very well-to-do background, some of them very senior in government, e.g. the current Attorney General, who was my head of house in school. But there was us, and this is what I'm talking about now, the orphans of Murungi. Those who he assisted in so much. Now, with the late Honorable Karume, under whatever context they referred to him, he was a man of wealth, immense wealth. And if he gave out of abundance. But here was a man who gave so much. He didn't have much in terms of wealth. In fact, he didn't, not by any stretch of the imagination. But he gave so much of himself. He gave his all. And he impacted our lives immensely. He enriched our lives. And that was Murungi, selflessly. And let me try and give you a brief about me and my relationship with Mr. Murungi. Yeah, in the condolence book, I wrote that he was my teacher, he was my mentor, he was my confidant, and he was my friend. He was all those things and more, not only to me, but to so many. Okay, and it is all these people that I am representing here. Now, I came to know Murungi when I was a young boy. I knew him on two levels. I will call the first one, the first phase, the material level. I came to know him when I was a young boy. I can just be told by Dr. Kenywa, we come from the same village. But I was around 10 or so, and after his A-levels, he started a school. It was those who I used to call them Harambe. a secondary school just within, and he used to visit our home, very well clad. I mean, he was immaculate. And they used to be with a certain African-American teacher. I only remember her first name. She was called Camellia. And they used to visit our home on and off. And that was the beginning of my seeing Mr. He just used to come and say, hi guys, you know. And then he goes and talks to our guardians. Now, I came to know him later in 1973. He came after his college education. He joined the teaching fraternity at Nairobi School, where I was a student. I was in Form 3 then. And yes, he did not teach me. We had several streams, but he did teach some people who are in the same level. I was in Form 3 then. And yes, that is when I started knowing him better. I started visiting him. Not so often. I don't know if it was so much to see him, but you know, it always came with a 20 bob. In those days, the 20 bob went very far. Yeah, and but I started even visiting more when from 5, from 6. That's when I really got to know him. Now, there's a bit of history where I come from. I lost my biological parents when I was very young, and about 6 years old. And I was brought up by my father's younger brother. He was a government or the court-appointed guardian with his American-born wife. And I lived with them for about 12 years. And then later on, just after my A-levels, they migrated to, or relocated to the US. And they took my younger siblings with them. So we remained here, 2 of us. When it came to a decision of where would I go, now just immediately after my O-level, that's when I said, I asked if I could go and stay with Mr. Murungi. And that's what I did. I'd just been employed a clerical job with a bank, and that's where I really began to live with Mr. Murungi and to get to know him. I was with him about 4 years, and we became very close. We even developed a nickname we were calling each other. We called each other Mbai. Mbai, I don't know what is the equivalent in English, but the closest I would think would be what was said you go to Britain or you get an Australia, they call each other mate. That is something about close. That's how close we became. Now, things were okay for most of the part until about the 4th year when he was now supposed to go to Australia. Things were becoming a bit, he's going again. I had discovered alcohol, and I started taking it I became more tolerant and taking more. And as his date of departure was getting on, you know, my behavior and so forth, it became degenerative. Until a point where now, when I'm coming late at night, one evening, he came, as I was going to bed, he came, switched on the light, and sat at the end of the bed. And he told me, Mbai, what's going on? And, you know, I was mumbling, you know, you are going, these ones, the other ones went, now what is all this? And he told me, no. Mbai, this cannot do. This won't do. You can do better. You deserve better. That was his way of persuading. And, you know, by the time he had left, it was mind-changing, just that address. I can say here that, you know, Murungi did different things. He didn't do different things. He did things differently. And that is what really changed me. From that point, I got up. You need, you know, to get on your feet. It is time for you now to start, you know, to leave the nest. And that is where I began. I went back. I changed my behaviors. And, you know, in a short time, I started rising up the corporate ladder. By the time I was 26, I was running a field office in Eldoret for the cooperative bank. There were no branches then, covering from Nandi all the way to Turkana. By the time he came from Australia, I was then doing accountant, and in no time I was a manager. That was the effect that Murungi had on me. And, you know, when he talked to me that evening, that was the closest that Murungi ever came to admonishing me. So that is phase 1, my life with Murungi. Now, when he came back, they entered another phase. By the time he came back, he also got married. By that time, I was doing branches, so we never got to see each other too much. But because I would work outside, my family would be in Nairobi. And when I came a weekend for, I was just with my family. But we got to meet each other later around 2006. I'd left the bank, I started going to US. And then him, as you have just been told, he started consultancy work. But after that accident, he was spending more time at home. And that is when, when I would come the second half of the year from US, I started visiting him. And then this is when I began depending on him more and more for advice and for psychological and emotional support. Yeah, and there are a lot of life lessons this man taught me. One of them, a very important one, because I grew up as a very angry kid. I always used to ask God, why this happened to us? Why, why? And he taught me now to deal with resentment. And he told me, if you keep these resentments, they are going to destroy you. This is one, you've got to find a way to deal with these ones. And that's another example. At whatever cost. Because he says they are very corrosive. They are going to affect your health. He talks about, and just as you have been told by Dr. here, members of health, he will tell you in any subject. They are going to destroy your health, high blood pressure, arteriosclerosis, that is the hardening of the heart, all of these ones. It hurts you more than it hurts the other. In fact, he used a big phrase. He says if you continue with resentment, it is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. That is a kind of profound lessons, life lessons he would teach. And I also got the opportunity at that time to sit with him and ask him down you remember before you went to Australia, why did it take you so long before you actually came and sat with me? Why were you tolerating those behaviors? And then he told me, you see, I understood your case. Okay. Can you explain? Now that opened another hour of explaining. He is not a person to tell you in 2-3 words. He'll tell you about all the way, even orphans, that if their siblings are separated, it affects them, it is traumatic. He goes on. I said, okay. And that was vintage Murungi. Always understood the case of others. And, that's what he was trying to explain to me. This parents and then, guardians, and then him is going subconsciously. It was being, I was in pain and I was hurting. That's why he handled it and he knew how to do it. Yes. And, let me try and, sorry. That is, let me give you a small insight on how much I came to depend on him for psychological and emotional support. You see, you have been told when he used to get sick, from the time he started 2007, he would become sick, then he becomes okay, then after that you hear he's in hospital, and whenever he was taking a turn for worse or going to hospital, I was always filled with this dread. Like I was always expecting the worst. Okay? And then when he would get better, it dissipates. And every time he goes again, it gets worse. This fear, this dread, it would increase again. But then, this final time, I was driving to Meru last Wednesday, and I finally heard that, he has passed. But this dread and this fear, which I had, which I would have expected, now to move from fear to grief, it didn't happen. It actually, it increased. And I was like, I was confused. What are these emotions which I'm going through? And Friday, Saturday, I'm not eating well. I was in an emotional confusion until we came to that fellowship on Sunday. Okay? And then the same song we sang, what a friend we have in Jesus. And then those lyrics, oh, what peace we often forfeit. or what needless pains we bear. All because we don't carry everything to God in prayer. Then it hit me like a bolt of lightning. All of my emotional baggage I would take to him. It was not supposed to take to Murungi. So it dawned on me that the fear I was having about his passing really didn't have to do with his death. It is fear that in the event he dies, that I will have nowhere to carry my emotional baggage. It was misplaced. So it was also another very selfish thing on my part. I didn't want him when he was going to Australia to leave selfishly. Here again, I don't want to release him to my maker. And I became almost emotionally collapsed in that thing. But I controlled until evening. That's when I let it all out. I said my rosary, my prayers, and I asked him for forgiveness for all that selfishness that we have always had. And from there was peace. And at that point, I was okay. Yeah, that was Murungi, that was me and him. And there are many others. If you had been participating in these meetings, the testimonies we had about this man, and all truthful. There's nothing. I've gone through this. You know, a lot of funerals and this kind of thing. People give very exaggerated things about some of, and you wonder, surely, is this the same person that I know? Yeah, very exaggerated. In fact, there was this story of this lady, the person who goes, you know, like at home. The grave is dug around the time when the church service is going on. You don't dig it like a day before. And this gentleman went, and just before the service was over, and he went and he checked. And these people, you know, a grave is supposed to be 6 feet. But this one here, they were 20 feet. In fact, you could hardly see them. They were just hearing, coo, coo, coo. Then he asked these vijanas, what's going on?